Hello there everyone, it's Aaron from Push Square here, kicking off this week in a big way with a look at the PS4 games yet to receive a PS5 patch boost, or indeed a native PS5 upgrade, but are so desperately deserving of one. This feature was originally written by the legendary Robert RAMSEY and was adapted into video by me. Of course, we've already ran through some of the most notable PS4 games that have already received this treatment in 2 separate videos, thanks Liam, but in lieu of a third, here we'll be running through our hopeful picks for the PS5 upgrade treatment. As you can imagine, we have a lot of games to get through, so strap in tight and let's get to it. Let's start with the obvious, shall we? Bloodborne is a certified PS4 classic, and quite frankly, it's a damn disgrace that it still hasn't been updated for PlayStation 5. Rumours of a remaster or even a remake have been doing the rounds for years, but honestly, a relatively simple 60 FPS patch would suit us fine. Now listen, we know that Bloodborne has some weird framerate issues, problems that mean simply uncapping the framerate isn't an option, but modders have already found ways around this. It would take a bit of effort then, but come on, Bloodborne at 60 FPS would be a dream come true. While you could argue that the rather good Sackboy: A Big Adventure largely fills the Little Big Planet shaped hole on PS5, it would still be nice to have the expansive platformer fully updated on Sony's newest system. Even today, Little Big Planet 3 has a lot to offer in terms of user-made content, and being able to explore such a rich tapestry of levels at a much higher frame rate would make it all much more appealing. A resolution boost wouldn't go amiss either. Assassin's Creed Origins was the change in gameplay formula that Ubisoft's series desperately needed when it released in 2017, and many fans would argue that it's still the best open world Assassin's Creed game, me included. Its Egyptian setting is eye-catchingly excellent, and it's got an addictive RPG structure. The only problem is that it's capped at 30 frames per second. Fortunately, there is reason to believe that Ubisoft might update Origins. Its sequel, Assassin's Creed Odyssey, got a 60 FPS PS5 patch, and now that game runs like a dream on Sony's current gen system. Let's hope that Origins gets the same treatment relatively soon. A fan favourite horror experience on PS4, Alien Isolation can still be an incredibly tense affair, but the whole thing would be that much more horrifying at 60 FPS. As with just about every other game on this list, an improved frame rate would mean much more responsive gameplay, and having extra control over Isolation's terrified protagonist would be a huge help during the title's hairier moments. Dying Light is still pretty much the best zombie game on PlayStation 4, and having it run at a much smoother 60 FPS would give us a perfect reason to revisit the infected zone on PlayStation 5. The gameplay premise remains unique all these years later, as you, and a couple of friends in co-op, if you want, parkour your way across the undead-infested island from a first-person perspective, battering zombies with all kinds of improvised weaponry. Concrete Genie is an overlooked PS4 exclusive. While it's unlikely to blow anyone's socks off, it's still a lovingly crafted adventure bolstered by a fair amount of whimsy and wonder. It looks pretty lovely as well, what with its magical graffiti popping against realistic environments. Quite frankly, this is a game that deserves another shot, and a solid PS5 update could be the catalyst. All of those neon monsters would really pop at 60 FPS, don't you think? What a shame it is that SPYRO REIGNITED Trilogy doesn't run at a silky 60 on PlayStation 5. This collection of gorgeous remasters simply deserves the improved performance, because they're pretty much perfect otherwise. There's no question that the original SPYRO games are absolute classics, but the work that went into the Reignited trilogy shouldn't be ignored, and we really should be enjoying these lovingly crafted revivals in their best possible form. The biggest problem with Fallout 4 on PlayStation 4? That often dreadful frame rate. The game's busiest areas can tank performance on last-gen hardware, but playing through the open world title on PS5 actually manages to remove a lot of those drops. It's a good start, but uncapping the frame rate would be a welcome next step, assuming of course that the PS4 version of Fallout 4 can hit the hallowed 60 in the first place. It could also make the sometimes sluggish combat feel that much more responsive. Now, this one is a bit of a strange inclusion, but bear with us. DRIVECLUB was, and maybe still is, one of the best racers on PlayStation 4, but it was retired long before its time. The game was actually delisted from the PlayStation Store in 2019, and its multiplayer servers were abandoned in 2020. But what a joy it would be to get back behind the wheel on PlayStation 5, even if it was just for a couple of sessions. Sadly, while it's more than deserving of a 60 FPS upgrade, out of all the games on this list, this is the dream update that is most unlikely to happen. A best-in-class remaster of a superb RPG, Final Fantasy XII The Zodiac Age has it all. Vastly improved visuals and excellent gameplay tweaks make for one of our favourite Final Fantasy titles of the last decade, but it's a real shame that it's still capped at 30 frames per second. Obviously, Final Fantasy XII isn't some fast-paced action game that needs a higher frame rate, but silky performance is just about the only thing that this near-perfect re-release is still missing. Uncharted, the Nathan Drake collection, hits a rock-solid 60 frames per second on PlayStation 5. Hooray! But that 1080p resolution is still a bit of a kicker. Granted, the first two Uncharted games don't particularly look amazing these days, but nice resolution boost would still work wonders on a good 4K display. Ultimately, these are three classic PlayStation titles, and having them right up to speed on PlayStation 5 would no doubt be pretty cool. Action games are always better at 60 FPS, there's just no getting around that fact. And while Shadow of War isn't quite Devil May Cry, it still feels far too sluggish whilst capped at 30 frames per second. The game itself proved divisive at launch in 2017, mostly because of its microtransactions, but they were later removed, and we'd argue that there's still a fantastic and addictive gameplay loop here, revolving around the all-important Nemesis system. The bottom line is that beheading orcs will never not be fun, and such fun could easily be amplified with a PlayStation 5 patch. Another game that was often let down by poor performance on PlayStation 4, Until Dawn is a memorably camp horror title. The game can still be great fun to play through with a group of friends, but as a cinematic experience here in the current console generation, its dodgy frame rate and 1080p resolution leave a lot to be desired. A boost in both departments would be more than welcome. Let's face it, Watch Dogs Legion isn't that good. We think Watch Dogs 2 is still easily the best entry in Ubisoft's tech hacking series, and so it's a shame that this colourful open world outing is still capped at 30 FPS. A return to San Fran would be well on the cards if the game was patched for PS5 though, purely because mucking around with NPCs is so much fun. The original Dragon's Dogma on PS3 suffered from some woeful performance dips, so when the PS4 version came along, managing to keep things at a rock-solid 30 FPS, we were over the moon. But then the PS5 happened, and we're back to wishing that this superb action RPG could rise above its frame rate cap. Capcom is considered by many to be the king of top quality combat, and Dragon's Dogma is still a joy to play. But 60 FPS would be an absolute dream come true. Just like SPYRO Reignited Trilogy, it's a bit crap that Crash Bandicoot's remade platforming classics are stuck at 30 FPS. Double the frame rate, and we dare say that these devilishly tricky jump-em-ups would be much more manageable, although it wouldn't do much to solve those rage-inducing collision issues. I didn't even touch it! The Last Guardian already runs at 60 FPS on PlayStation 5, but only if you're playing a totally unpatched version. As such, it's easy to imagine that a quick patch could improve the experience significantly. Unfortunately, if you've been keeping your copy up to date, you're stuck with your catbird dog at a disappointing 30 FPS. It's a lovely looking game with some especially smooth animation work, and it's a huge shame that it can't reach its full potential, at the moment at least. Now, DC Fandom is coming up, so why not do yourself a favour and go check out some Batman Arkham Knight gameplay. It still looks really good, and it's genuinely hard to believe that it was released in 2015. While it didn't quite reach the heights of its predecessors, the bloody Batmobile, Arkham Knight's a quality Batman title, and a proper PS5 patch would be very much appreciated. At 30 FPS in 1080p, this is one of those very highly rated PS4 games that could easily do with a boost. We're cheating just a little bit here by including two games in one entry, but both Yakuza Kiwami 2 and Yakuza 6 The Song of Life currently suffer from the same fate. They're the only two Yakuza games playable on PS5 and PS4 that don't run at 60 FPS, and that's a damn shame considering they're two of Kazuma Kiryu's best adventures. Bringing them up to speed with the rest of the series would have us booking a vacation in Kamurocho all over again. Dragon Ball Z Kakarot is the most detailed and in-depth adaptation of the iconic Dragon Ball Z story that you'll find on PlayStation. But having its fast-paced, crazy combat system capped at 30 FPS is quite rubbish. There's some prime anime action here, but it can feel a tad unresponsive at times. It's not hard to imagine a PlayStation 5 patch remedying this therefore, and it would also give us an excuse to finally play that Trunks DLC. Before the PlayStation 4 got absolutely swamped with amazing RPGs, The Witcher 3, Persona 5, Dragon Quest XI and more, all we had to make do with was Dragon Age Inquisition. And to be fair, it's still a ruddy great RPG, packed with memorable characters, quests and even a rewarding combat system. But playing it today can be a bit of a chore. The controls are stiff, it looks a tad dated graphically, and it's still capped at 30 FPS. A 60 FPS boost would be a gift from the maker, but we're left wondering whether a proper remaster would be a much better deal after all these years. Persona 5 Royal isn't just one of the best games on PS4, it's one of the best RPGs ever made. And if that's not enough to warrant a surprise PlayStation 5 patch, then we don't know what is. Like a few other games on this list, Royal is a turn-based excursion, and so it doesn't need a boost to 60 FPS to improve playability. But come on, imagine how good this insanely stylish masterpiece would look running at double the frame rate. Wowzer! We're probably never getting a sequel to Sleeping Dogs, and that absolutely sucks. But wouldn't it lessen the pain a little bit knowing that we could play Sleeping Dogs Definitive Edition at 60 FPS on PS5? Don't get us wrong, this arcadey sandbox hasn't aged brilliantly, but its best moments are still so much fun. Hong Kong is calling if that PS5 patch ever comes in. Another game that's capped at a baffling 30 frames per second, Crash Team Racing NITRO-FUELED should be a silky smooth arcade racing experience, but it somehow isn't. Coupled with some achingly long load times, a PS5 update could grant some dramatic improvements, and it'd probably push us to actually pick the game back up. Honestly, the core of Crash Team Racing is so good that leaving the game in its current state should be considered a crime. You didn't think we'd forgotten about Red Dead Redemption 2, did you? One of the greatest open worlds ever made, Arthur Morgan's epic tale arguably deserves a PS5 update more than any other title on this list. But given Rockstar's obsession with GTA 5, we might not ever get one. Horrifying really when you stop to think about it. And that just about does it for our own personal picks, but are there any more PS4 games that you can think of which are in desperate need of a PS5 patch? Let us know in the comment section below. Then, when you've done that, be sure to leave this video a like if you enjoyed it, and consider subscribing to the Push Square YouTube channel for everything PlayStation related. Until then, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.